right, am I on? Cool. How's everybody doing today? Good. I just wrote what I was going to say about 2 days ago, so I don't have it all memorized, so you'll forgive me if I read. But the name of this talk that I'm about to give is Keeping the Faith. College. I've been there for about 5.5 years now, and since I've decided to go to graduate school, I'll be there for at least 2.5 more. And it's been quite an experience. I'm proud to say that I think I've grown and learned a lot during these past several years. One thing that I'm happiest about is that I feel like I've been able to grow stronger in my faith during that time. I'm really happy about that because I know that many people have the opposite experience in college. Many people out on their own for the first time tend to grow away from the church. Some even grow away from God. This is why you hear about people warning their kids to be careful about the types of things that they're going to face, what they need to say no to, and things like that. And there's nothing wrong with that. In fact, I think you'd be remiss as a parent if you didn't try to prepare your kids for in some way for the future as you send them off to do their own thing for the first time. But I'm here to say that college does not have to be this thing we worry about, this thing that gives us so much information that we don't know what to do with it and we get confused and wander off. College has made my faith stronger. That's not to say I haven't had to question it. I have, and that's actually what helped me most. Why do we believe what we believe? Really, why? Maybe the existence of God just makes more sense to you than the opposite. Maybe you see the evidence of God all around you. Maybe you learned through long, hard years of making unfortunate decisions that God had your back all along. For most of you, there's probably some deep personal answer. But not everyone has those experiences, especially younger people who've only been living for 18 to 22 years. And no matter what you tell them, you can't manufacture that experience for them. You can raise someone with the knowledge of God, you can point them in the right direction, but they have to take a leap of faith and go down that road. Often, it takes something to set off their faith journey. For me, it was learning shortly after I began college that a close friend of mine was an atheist. He had been for a few years, but had only recently decided to tell people about it, as he was raised a Christian. My first reaction was to ask him why he didn't believe in God, and then try to argue the merits of belief versus disbelief with him. I learned 2 things from that conversation that were extremely sobering. Number 1, I couldn't convince him of what I thought. Number 2, I didn't have the knowledge necessary to even attempt to do so. You see, my friend is extremely intelligent. He's one of the smartest guys I know. And his reasons for not believing are not bad ones. They're not nonsensical. They aren't simple. They're reasons he came up with after thinking about them and deciding that what he'd been raised to believe wasn't what he felt could be true from a logical standpoint. I could argue the opposite points of what he was saying, but I couldn't back up my arguments with anything more than solid opinions much of the time, because honestly, I didn't know what was accurate and what wasn't. I hadn't read the Bible enough. I hadn't read it all the way through. So, I decided to do that. Once I started reading the Bible, I began to have questions about it. When you're a kid, your experience of the Bible tends to be one of selections, stories that are chosen to highlight important and often less controversial points. And this is fine because, most kids who are in 2nd grade probably aren't really ready to take on super complicated issues. But at some point, each person needs to become well acquainted with what we believe. Too many of us, I think, feel like I did. Reading the Bible is something that I should do, that could be helpful to me, but it's not a huge deal if I don't. This isn't true. You may be satisfied with your level of faith, but if you don't know what your own book says, it's going to be difficult to talk about it to other people. Sure, having a degree in theology is not necessary to bear witness to the gospel. Thank God. But having a basic knowledge of what happened and didn't happen is fairly important when trying to convince someone that you might know what you're talking about. Also, I would say that some people who think they're satisfied with their faith might only feel so because it's never truly been challenged. Maybe their lives have been easy and sheltered. More likely, they simply haven't allowed themselves to question anything for fear that they won't know the answers. We needn't be afraid of such things. We have a book to study and a God who can make things clearer to us if we ask. We also have other resources. When I changed my major from music to English, one of the classes I discovered I needed to take was philosophy. I loved philosophy, and credit it with helping me to think through many complex issues to come to solid conclusions about what I believe about many things. But in that process, it raised some questions in my mind that were difficult to answer. I had to wrestle with them. Here's a piece of advice. Don't take in new information from reputable sources with a closed mind, saying something like, well, the Bible doesn't say that exactly happened, so it can't be true. Try to think about it in a different way. Science and logic aren't lying to us. However, they may be misunderstood, or if not misunderstood, incompletely understood. Try to think about how the knowledge you have gained and the knowledge you already have might both be true. What I said about science and logic is also true about God's Word, by the way. It isn't lying to us. I think most of you are probably here because you agree with me on that. But it can be misunderstood. It can be understood incompletely. I came to this realization because of all the questions I had which were not answered simply by reading. I had to look up some passages on the internet and see what scholars said about them. I still do. Sometimes I ask my pastor what context a passage is supposed to be in. One of the most useful things I did was I signed up for a history and literature of the Bible course the semester after I took philosophy. The course was fantastic. It gave me a basic perspective of the historical context of the Bible that it was set in, and as well as the specific purposes of each book. Too often we forget, the Bible is a set of 66 books that were written separately. They're drawn together by a common theme, and that they all reveal something important about our relationship with God, but they're not written as a series. Some are historical, some are poetic, some are prophetic, some are there to impart wisdom. All are written with a purpose, which is not like our impartial recording of the facts today. In those days, history was recorded in such a way to get across a point, and therefore details could be moved around to make the story flow better. This doesn't have to make the story untrue by any means, but it does mean that there's a little bit of room for things not to be 100% exactly as they were in order and stuff like that. It's sort of like when you see a movie that's based on a true story as opposed to a historical documentary. The other thing, that and realizing this and the other things that this course taught me helped immensely with the way that I looked at the Bible and how I answered the questions that I had about it. It also helped me understand things better and explain them more clearly to those who did not understand. I've talked a lot about the scholarly portion of what I've done to strengthen my faith. However, there is something else which is also important to keeping your faith strong: having a faith community. One big reason I think people drift away from church when they get to college is that for many of them, going to church is their own responsibility for the first time. It's up to them to get out of bed in the morning, and with the lifestyle most of us have in college, getting up to go to class is hard enough. Most people also have to find a new church, as theirs is too far away. And when you don't know anyone, that can seem daunting, especially if you've gone to the same church your entire life and consider those people to be like your family. But it's important to find a church because life in college is not only new and challenging, it's also busy. Maybe not so much at first, but don't fool yourself if you haven't been there yet. It will get busy eventually. And when we are busy, we have a tendency to focus on things we need to do by a certain deadline. And since God doesn't usually send down obvious deadlines and edicts from heaven, God tends to fall down on our list of priorities. We need to keep him in our thoughts because it is him who can get us through in the hard times. Certainly, he is there when we call on him, but if we call on him constantly, as opposed to just when we remember that we need him, we're often able to avoid much of the heartache that comes otherwise. A community of faith helps you remember God. It also gives you an opportunity to discuss whatever questions you have with fellow believers. Classes and books and scholars found online are good resources, but they can't always respond back to you, and sometimes you need to have a full conversation about something with a fellow human being. Your fellow Christians can help you do that. Finally, a college campus is a great place to find a church, because where you find a group of young people who are choosing to go to church, not out of habit but out of desire, you often find people who are really passionate about their beliefs and who show Christ's love in abundance. Everything I've said about knowing the Bible and context and asking hard questions is important, but the fact remains that nothing is more important or convincing to me than seeing Christ's love in other people. Becoming involved in an on-campus ministry can help you see this on a regular basis. I said toward the beginning of my talk that parents who want to provide advice for their children when sending them off to college are doing the right thing. I will now end by saying, from my perspective, some of the advice I think they should give. Number 1, read the Bible, all of it. If it takes a long time, that's okay. It's long, it's often difficult, and some parts are honestly just boring. That's the truth. I'm still not all the way through, 5 years after I started, but I'm keeping at it. Read it all and seek to understand it all. It's not just helpful, it's important. You base your life on the things in this book, so know what you're saying you believe in. Number 2, don't be afraid to ask questions. Don't be afraid of the answers you might find. Ask God for wisdom and for truth and for help understanding all that you come into contact with, and then move forward with confidence and an open mind. Those who accept what they are told and never come to an understanding of why they believe may one day reach the time when they're confronted with something they don't know how to reconcile with their faith. But those who have searched and who have found God on their journey will know Him more deeply and will know that He can lead them through uncertainty. Number 3, try your best to make room in your schedule for a history and literature of the Bible class. Seriously, take more than one if you can. Unless you're majoring in theology or maybe philosophy, it's probably not going to be required, but you should take it. The knowledge gained is a great starting point for putting together all you learned by reading the Bible in a cohesive way and reconciling it with what you know about history in the world today. And as one other note, I would go with a history and literature of the Bible class. If you just go with literature of the Bible class, and there are many, they tend to look at the Bible as just another one of our great historical books that have been written, and as we know, it's a little more important than that. Number 4, find a community of faith to be a part of. If there's one on your campus made up of fellow college students, I recommend trying that one. Having a group of people around you that can remind you of God, help you with your questions, and most importantly, show you an example of Christ's love in practice is perhaps the most important thing you can do to keep your faith strong. Also, be willing to give things more than one try. Christians are not perfect. Sometimes they, like anyone else, give off a bad first impression. Just because the first person you talked to wasn't what you expected doesn't mean everyone else will be that way. Likewise, just because you didn't feel right at the first church you walked into doesn't mean you won't find one where you do. And when you do find one, become involved in it. Do things that allow you to witness and be an active part of Christ's message. Don't merely show up to hear the sermons. Even if those are great, there's only so much that's happening there. You need to find more. Number 5. Finally, pray. Tell God your needs and desires, thank Him for your blessings, ask Him to help you become what He wants you to be, and take you where He wants you to go. Seek the truth and seek it through Him. Never give up on Him, and know He will never give up on you, even if His timing doesn't seem to fit with your own. I feel that people who do these things can have a college experience that makes their faith stronger, just like I have. I hope that what I say here today is helpful to anyone who will be going to college or who will be sending someone off to college. But even if neither of those things applies to you, I think the things I've said are still important and can still be applied to most people's lives in one way or another. I hope they help everyone who desires to benefit from them. Glory be to God. Amen.
For you that don't know me, my name is Amanda Willis, and I am one of the loudest and proudest members of the Fightin' Texas Aggie class of 2015. AAA, whoop! So I have been a part of this church since I was 8 years old, and I'm not going to lie, going off to college and keeping my faith wasn't as hard as it could have been, because I have a brother who I slightly followed in his footsteps in many ways, and he found a church, luckily for me instead, and I joined that church, and God blessed me so much with that church. They have Thursday night worship and sermon and free food, which is awesome. And so every Thursday night I go there, and I always look forward to it because those are my friends. Like, those are the people that I stay connected with through church, through God's love, through food. And it's just amazing, like the sermons that I get from there. And then also, through Texas A&M, honestly, Texas A&M is a great resource for Christians in general, because we also have a Tuesday night worship called Breakaway. And if any of you have ever heard of Breakaway or ever heard of Ben Stewart, I'm sure you know how absolutely amazing he is. And he just has a way of talking to college students. Like, I don't know if it's the way he talks, because it's really funny, because he just gets like really, really fast and just really passionate about it, or if it's what he talks about. But somehow he just speaks so well, and he just like, he makes you feel like he knows you, because every single week he talks directly at you, just like stares into the depths of your heart, and just tears you apart pretty much without knowing it. But so those are my two ways that those are my two outlets of my Christian faith. But honestly, going into college, my parents, they didn't scare me about college. They really like just encouraged me to go out and do what I do. They never made me worry about alcohol, about drugs, about partying, and I don't do any of it. So that's pretty cool. And but one thing that I know I really figured out is that you really have to make faith your own going into college, because I've grown up in this church. I know what the Bible says. I can't say that I've read the Bible yet, because there's a lack of time that I have in college. And but I know that I've really had to make my faith my own. One of the classes that I took, not religious-based at all, was biology, my freshman year and my senior year of high school. And I don't know why, but biology just like strengthened my faith so much, because you see like all these tiny little things that are happening inside your body, how perfectly they work with each other, and how if one tiny little thing is off, you're dead. Like you're gonna be messed up somehow. And I just think it's absolutely amazing that God can do that, and that God built us that intricately, that just like these tiny microscopic things are just work so well. Sorry. And then just another thing that, along with making my faith my own, is also, like Daniel said, getting connected to a church. I've always been connected to y'all. Y'all are my church family. I wasn't sure how that was going to work out. Like, how am I supposed to make a whole new church family going off to college? But I know that there are adults at my church in College Station that love me like I am their own daughter, and they would welcome me in with open arms whenever I need them, whenever I may want to just get away from the college life. And I love them so much, and I respect them for being able to just open their house to just hungry college students all the time. And I just think it's absolutely amazing how I have these resources in college, and how they reach out to us, and how much they love college students and having us come in and just feeding us and everything. But yeah, that's about it. So, thank you.